A $50 4K action camera? Man, I hope it's good. The Eken H9S. What's up, everybody? I'm the Everyday Dad. If I can figure it out, you can figure it out. Today on Reviewing the Cheapest, we've got the Eken H9S, which is the cheapest action camera you're going to be able to find that can actually record 4K video. Now, the camera does feel budgety, but thankfully they included a case to offset this a bit. More on this later. I do like that it comes with a tripod and enough accessories to get started. Also, and this is a big deal in my book, they included an external battery charger. I hate having to charge a camera by plugging into it with the battery inside of it. I hate that. Every camera should come with an external way to charge your battery. Cough, cough, GoPro, and Sony. Both you. Real quick before we get started, and I'm not trying to sling any mud here, but this packaging for the camera looks kind of familiar. What does that look like, I wonder? But what makes an action camera matter to me is the pillars of action! Action! That's freaky. Number one, ease of use. In my mind, the thing that makes action cameras easiest to use is a well-functioning touchscreen. Now, it is a bit much to ask for such a feature in such a budget camera like this, and it doesn't disappoint as it has no touchscreen. It does have an LCD screen, which is useful when you're framing your shots. And I will say it is very easy to manipulate the controls in this camera because it doesn't have a lot of options. Depending on your point of view, that could be a win. It's pretty easy to use. Number two, durability. Again, if an action camera can't take a hit, you just have a non-zoomable point and shoot that's pretty much worthless. However, I do really like when cameras come with a functioning waterproof case, and the Eken comes with two separate mounts. One for waterproof outings, and one when you don't expect there to be much moisture, so good on Eken for that. I love having accessories included with action cameras. Number three, compatible with GoPro style mounts and accessories. GoPro created the world of the action camera accessories, so everything has to work with GoPros in mind, and this is shaped like a GoPro. So that works out for that. It will generally work with the majority of GoPro accessories. And we all know that I love gimbals. I love gimbals so much that I consider it a pillar of how good an action camera is if it will work with my GoPro gimbal. And I currently use a Feotech G5. The H9S is a lighter action camera, but with a little bit of work and adjustments, you can get it to work with a gimbal. And that's just, you gotta do that or I won't even bother with you. That's why I don't use my Sony FDR-X3000 that much anymore. It's a great camera, but it doesn't work with my gimbals. Number four, decent, doesn't have to be perfect, image quality. I do have some problems with the image quality in the Eken camera, but we'll talk about that more in a minute. The footage is about what you'd expect for a $50 action camera. I want to be pretty rough on it, but then I remember what I paid for it. I personally think the 1080p looks way better than the 4K, but just that it films in 4K at all is pretty impressive for the price tag. Number five, and my favorite, stabilization. We already talked about gimbals. Stabilization. And this is another thing that goes by the wayside when you come to budget action cameras. Cost-cutting measures, you can't really fit a lot of electronic image stabilization technology into a $50 camera. If you can, let me know, and I will definitely check you out. So if you're an action camera company out there that has a $50 stabilized camera, my email is attached to the channel. I do personally think if you're going to invest a significant amount of money in an action camera, you need to get something that has good stabilization. And it doesn't have to have optical image stabilization. There's only a couple cameras that have that. But if you can get decent electronic image stabilization, I think you've gotten a pretty good deal when it comes to an action camera. And this is pretty easy. Like I said, it has no stabilization, so pretty easy to say that it does not meet that pillar. Let's talk about the remaining specs that are important to the average person. It has a SunPlus 6350 chipset, and it has an OV4689 sensor. Never heard of it. So in layman's terms, what that means is this is not a true 4K camera. It's taking a smaller image and it's interpolating it. It's blowing it up into a 4K image. It does 4K at 25 frames per second, 2.7K at 30 frames per second, 1080p at 60 and 30 frames per second, and for its slow motion, it does 720p at 120 frames per second. It has a 170-degree field of view, and it has two rechargeable 1050 milliamp hour batteries. So let's talk about some things that I really like and that I really don't like about the Eken H9S. Number one, for positives, I really like all the accessories that come with it. Like I've said before, I hate when an action camera comes and it's basically unusable out of the box. Yi action camera is the worst about this. My Yi Lite, even the original Yi I bought, came with a selfie stick, but if I want to put it on like a helmet or a mountain bike, an action camera, I can't do any of that because it doesn't come with any accessories. I like when an action camera comes with enough accessories that you can start using it right out of the box, and the Eken does do that, so it's good on Eken for that. Number two, we already talked about this, the external battery charger. That is amazing. This is the first action camera I've gotten that comes with an external battery charger. Everybody should do that. Every single action camera company, every camera company should do that, period. Panasonic does it, that's why I'm a big fan of Panasonic cameras. Sony doesn't do it. A lot of other companies don't give you external battery chargers, which sucks. Give us external battery chargers. There's nothing I hate more than having to charge a battery by plugging it into the camera. It's terrible. It's terrible. And I really like how it looks. Not that that's a big thing when it comes to cameras. I mean, it's the image that comes out of it, not how your image of looking at it matters, but I do kind of like how it looks. It looks I like a matte finish myself. Okay, the two things I really don't like, and these could be a deal breaker depending on where you're at. This shoots in 4K 25 frames per second. Now that's great if you live in Europe or in a PAL region. For those of us that live in the United States, 25 frames per second puts us in a weird place because we normally use 24 frames per second, 30 frames per second, 60 frames per second. And this will cause problems when you're importing it into your editing program. So that's something I don't necessarily like. But like I said, it depends on where you're at. If you're in Europe, no issues because you already use 25 frames per second. Number two, and this is a big one. This could be a deal breaker for you. It's definitely a deal breaker for me. This guy overheats when recording in 4K. Now, if you're going to record in 4K, you only get a couple of minutes before this thing just stops working. It doesn't give you a warning, doesn't give you any kind of indication on what's going on. You can then record in 1080p. So what, right? So should you get an Eken H9S? Maybe. If you just have to be able to record in 4K and all you have to spend is $50, yeah, okay, get the Eken H9S. I mean, it does 4K. And it costs about $50. So if that's all you can spend, then yes, I would say I would feel okay telling you to get this. I personally think there are 1080p cameras out there for roughly the same price that look a lot better, but some people just have to have 4K. I mean, I'm not judging. Some people just won't buy a camera unless it does 4K. So yes, if you can save up some money or you don't need 4K, like we just said, there are some better cameras that I would recommend to you. But if this is all you have, this will take light, it will transfer it onto the sensor, and it will process it in a digital format that you can put on your computer, thereby being a camera. Or if you need a camera to get destroyed, this one would probably work for that pretty good because it was only $50. Will I keep it? No, I'm not going to keep this camera. I refuse to keep cameras that overheat. That's the reason why I got rid of my Sony A6300. I refuse to use cameras that overheat. If you got to give me a bigger camera or you got to have a smaller sensor, I'm fine with either of those things. I just want gear that works. I want to know that it works. I'll be sending this one back. I didn't actually throw it. I don't want to break it. Well, what are your favorite cheap action cameras? Leave a comment below. Let's talk about some of the awesome cheap action cameras out there. And heck, maybe you'll find one that I've never seen before and I will feature it on Reviewing the Cheapest. Also, click that subscribe button down below. We do Reviewing the Cheapest every Monday at 6 p.m. Eastern. Well, hey, I'm the Everyday Dad, and if I can figure out that 25 frames per second isn't actually 24 frames per second, seriously, reading is hard. I thought this shot in 24 frames per second because I didn't read. Don't be me. You can figure it out. Thanks for watching.